Who's ready to win the day in sports? I know you are. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com, Monday through Friday, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Justin Fensterman, and let's break everything down from a fantasy sports perspective.
What is going on, everybody? Good afternoon or morning if you're not on the East Coast. My name is Justin Fensterman, and welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily here on the Elite Plus Network, powered by the good old FG, FantasyGuru.com, your midweek madness edition here as we're getting into week 2 of the fantasy football season. The content rocking and rolling at FantasyGuru.com. We have all of your sports needs right there. Make sure you get on board with the Elite Mafia and sign up. Here is how you could do so if you're not part of the Elite Mafia. You could give me a follow at Fensty Sports, FENSTY Sports on X and Instagram, and in our FantasyGuru.com Discord at Fensty, FENSTY. We have many different ways that you could join us when it comes to betting, DFS, season-long fantasy football. We've got you covered. Streams, this one free to everybody out there, but we also have separate streams as part of FantasyGuru.com when you do sign up. We explain our process. We teach the process, which is something that is very important. Patience, big time part of that process. Going to talk about that a little bit today, and why week 1 and post-week 1 overreactions, which I know is a very popular topic, is something where we have to be careful of not going too crazy with our teams, especially when it comes to trading in fantasy football. Here, I'll be answering your questions throughout. Rich Maletto, the Fantasy Bosco, is going to join me in just a little bit. We're going to talk with him about some fun waiver ads and also preview some of the week 2 matchups for you with some of the highest totals out there here. So it's good to see everyone. Ethan, good to see you. Good to see you, Tony, as well. Like I said, and Ray and I have been talking about how fall shows are going to go, and I'll repeat once again here because, again, I always say this, we at Fantasy Guru try to appeal to all. No matter what sport you play, we want you to get in the game. And that's what it's all about. And that's why for all of you out there who love their baseball, Ray Flowers does a lot of baseball. Mondays, though, which Ray hosts, is going to be an all football show. I'll say it one more time again. All football reaction to the big Sunday games and Monday night preview or previews for this week. So Ray's got you on Monday with that. Tuesday will be a little bit of a hybrid show. Baseball and football. Armando Marsal joins Ray on Tuesday on Fantasy Sports Daily. Then you got me on Wednesdays. Rich Maletto will join me. Now, until the NBA season starts, it's going to be all football. But then once the NBA season starts, because I know a lot of you tune in for some DFS and for some betting strategy, the first half of the stream will be basketball once we're in season. And then the second half will be football with Rich joining me and talking all things football. So you get a little bit of everything. Then Thursday, back to Ray Flowers, a little bit of a hybrid of baseball and football. Tyler Beaker joins Ray Flowers every Thursday. And then on Friday, Russell Clay joins Ray, another baseball, football hybrid show for you. And by the way, Russell Clay joining me every single Sunday, Elite Sports Game Time. Back in action this past Sunday was a lot of fun. Bring on some of your favorite analysts from FantasyGuru.com, talking about what happened in the 1 p.m. Eastern action, talking about the live action from the 4 p.m. Eastern window, and then previewing Sunday night football, and then actually taking you live, maybe even to the game, and reacting in the moment to what happened. So we're giving you all of that on Elite Sports Game Time, including in our Discord. We have a Game Time Discord channel, which you can react, and we're on the air, and we're seeing some of your reactions, and we'll talk about them. We'll make you famous on the airwaves, too. So that's on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, SiriusXM Channel 87, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern every single Sunday, Elite Sports Game Time with Fensty and Clay. So that's what's going on with this show for the next number of months, and we're damn happy to be here with you on Fantasy Sports Daily. By the way, make sure you catch the Elite Sports Show with Jeff Bands all week long on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, 2 p.m. Eastern. Ray joins Jeff every single Wednesday. So here's the agenda. Here's what we got cooking for today's action here, because I'm going to talk about some of the matchups coming up. I'm going to talk about waiver ads, and I know a lot more people are playing in guillotine leagues, also known as chop leagues to some people. And I want to talk a little bit about that and the strategy behind what goes into chop leagues. And I'll, as I said before, be answering your questions. What's going on, Angelo? Angelo, regular here on Fantasy Sports Daily. So it's great to see everybody. Yes, Angelo, no Ray today. Sorry to disappoint you. You stuck with me. But the good news is you get Ray on Elite Sports on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, 2 p.m. Eastern with Jeff Mans. So looking at some of the big pickups here, and Tyler Beaker's got your waiver wire coverage at fantasyguru.com, and talking about some of the players that you could look to pick up. And right away, we look at some of these Cleveland Browns offensive weapons, because let me turn your attention to this fun division game that we have going on between the Browns and the Ravens. And yeah, to me, Ravens going to come out pissed off, but the Ravens offense is good, whether they're pissed or not. Cleveland is a double-digit dog in this game. Immediately screams they're going to need to throw a lot. Mr. Flacco is going to have to make it work. And so I think when it comes to this Cleveland Browns team, there are just so many questions, because we're getting reports that Quinshon Judkins is not going to be practicing, and we'll have to see if that ends up coming to fruition, but we're all waiting on him. For some of us that ended up picking him up, I actually, in a 10-team league, someone dropped him. See, and that happens, by the way. That happens after week 1, after week 2. Some of your league mates get a little frustrated, get a little impatient. I think I mentioned this in my league, which has a lot of savvy fantasy football players, very veteran players in it. Someone dropped after a couple of weeks, Chuba Hubbard. And I picked him up on like a Sunday morning. It was a Sunday morning ad, and I'm just like, what? I mean, how did I miss this? Clearly everybody else missed it. And that actually helped me. That started to help me ascend in the standings. So that's why every week, no matter how well your team performed or how poorly it did, you got to be looking at that waiver wire. You just never know when you might find a gift right there. And yes, Angelo, I understand that very much. We'll have to see what ends up falling out. So those that have Dylan Sampson, by the way, you might want to hang on just a little bit. And I'm going to be talking to Rich Maletto, who wrote about him in his articles at fantasyguru.com about whether or not he can still have a solidified role even when Judkins is eventually put back in. So we'll have to see what ends up happening with the Cleveland backfield. But Cedric Tillman, I mean, somebody else that we were told, hey, Lead Mafia, Jeff Mans. This is why Jeff Mans is really great at his job. I mean, telling us to watch out for Cedric Tillman. Already have him on my teams, and very nice from what we saw there. And then the big question is the tight end situation, because we have to remember that just because you have multiple players at a position, and especially tight end, that doesn't necessarily mean that the second tight end is there just to block, or the second tight end is there as an injury replacement or whatever. Because from one of the things that you notice when you look at the breakdown of the plays that Fannin, who is a very popular ad, one of the things that you notice is that where he was lining up. I mean, it wasn't same spot. They're going to try to use him in a lot of different ways. We'll have to see. But the bottom line is, even with David Njoku, there is definitely some intrigue regarding Fannin. Are they loaded with pass-catching weapons in Cleveland? No, they've got a few. Tillman mentioned, Judy mentioned, Njoku. They've got guys. Sampson we saw utilized heavily there. And we saw that a decent amount in week 1, where a lot of these running backs were making their weight, not by what they were doing on the ground, but catching passes too. So for those in any kind of PPR format or half, you were definitely benefiting while sweating. I'll tell you that much here. But when it comes to Fannin, can we still see him have a role here? They're going to need to throw. They're going to need to find people, and him lining up all over the field, that can actually benefit him here. So is this somebody that, for those that have waivers going into Thursday, that do, let's say, waiver priority? Because I know that there are a few of you out there that still utilize waiver priority. And to me, why? I'm not so sure. Because definitely free agent acquisition budget, which has been around for a long time, something a little bit more popular. And that's something that I think should be utilized a little bit more than waiver priority. Someone sits on their number one claim all year long. And that's the other problem too. For those that have a top few claim, if it stays that way and it doesn't change every week, and that's where you have to know your league rules. Because I'm in this waiver priority league my cousin runs, where it's not always, well, if you have the number one claim, you sit on it until, or you have it until you spend it. You have it until you utilize it in waivers. No, sometimes waivers change. The leagues often utilize waivers in a system where lowest points for the week get priority. Reverse order of standings get priority. Don't like that. Really don't like that. But that's how some people play out there. So do I think he's worth a number one claim? I do not. Is there really anybody out there, and I know it's league specific, that is worth that number one claim? Not so sure about that either. Because again, it's week one. For instance, I got a team with Luther Burden. A lot of excitement here for him and this rookie class in general. But getting him in one of my leagues, I obviously knew that he's got some competition there. Moore, Adunze, he's got competition, a bunch of pass catching options. But does that mean right away in one of my deeper leagues, I'm just going to drop him? I'm not going to do that just yet. But yeah, it's week one, and I'm thinking, wow, no targets there. We'll have to see. I want him on the field at the end of the day. And that's where we've got to look at the bigger picture. And when you are with us as part of the Elite Mafia, fantasyguru.com, I really do feel like we do a great job, because when you look at the snap counts here for Burden, 27% compared to the other receivers, even Olamide Zaccheaus, I mean, he's someone too. You saw him more involved than Burden. Something that you don't want to see. Does that mean it's going to be that way every week? No, it's not. But yeah, I get a little nervous too. Absolutely. So that's the thing. And look, I know Fred's asking about, when it comes to handcuffing too for the Chicago Bears, right? You would think it is Roschon. But then you saw another guy, you saw one guy get a little bit more action there, and you know that Roschon wasn't involved. And Roschon there, what's that going to mean for him? Because all offseason long, I was thinking it was going to be him. So that's where we got to be careful. That's where I know, and we're all about handcuffing, we need things to clear up just a little bit. Very hard to navigate the first couple of weeks of the fantasy football season. Now let's talk a little bit about guillotine chop leagues that you all are in, because I've been getting a lot more questions about them. I talk about them a little bit, and then I get hit up in Discord or on X and Instagram again at Fensty Sports. And here's the thing. You got to think with a more current mindset of your team when you're in a guillotine. And I've won a guillotine league before 2 years ago. Phil Backer runs a guillotine league. You all know him there, Fantasy Sports Radio, fantasyguru.com. He runs an excellent guillotine league. I won it a couple of years ago. And a big part of it is making sure you do have your budget, or at least some of your budget, because as the season moves on, you know how it works. Teams become all-star studded fantasy teams by the end of the year. And then the competition is very fierce. It gets to a point where you have to score at least 100 points or else you're not moving on. And that's why you need a little bit of your budget. And the thing is, when it comes to guillotine leagues, you're kind of playing for today. And you have to look at your team week by week. I've got a team with a couple of injuries on it going into this week. I needed to spend a little bit more. And if you're in a guillotine league and you just survived and your team was underperforming and you're suffering, maybe you lost someone like George Kittle, and that was someone you spent a high draft pick on, especially in guillotine leagues where you've got a zillion teams. So now you have to make up for it, and you need those points. Then, tight end's one of those things where beyond the top few, it could be a crapshoot. So maybe that's not the best example, but still, if your receivers just didn't do anything and you barely skated by, that's one thing. But if you're finishing in the top half or the top third of your guillotine league, and you had a few of your established players do well, and then a couple of them were more dud-like, then you don't need to necessarily go in on Jamar Chase. Because here's the problem. In my guillotine league, Jamar Chase, I actually put in a bid for, because I don't have the best receiving core. I'll talk about the receiving core I have right now. And in this particular league, again, this is where each week your team is changing and everything. You're throwing guys back. But I'm sitting here with Drake London, who, Raheem Morris apparently, and I'm seeing this flash here, just came out and said that he should be okay. I'll believe it when I see it, though. That's one of those things because he did look like he was in a little bit of pain. So Drake London I have, and then I have Devontae Smith and Cooper Kupp. Not very appetizing. Only need to start two of them right there. So I put a bid out there for Jamar Chase, but I also finished in the top 10 of the week. And I've got guys like Jalen Hurts there. And I have a couple of running backs. And Dalton Kincaid, who week by week we're going to have to see, but he was helpful. So when it came to what I ended up doing, I did put bids in. I always put bids in to try to upgrade because you'll see a lot of the focus is put on Jamar Chase and Ken Walker, who I ended up bidding on and getting. By the way, out of $1,000, I ended up getting him for about $250. Let's say not bad. Not bad. Again, I went in on my quarterback with Jalen Hurts. That was big. I started with a receiver and quarterback there with Jalen Hurts and Drake London. I was at one of the ends of the snake. So coming back, I was very vulnerable at running back. I ended up with Tony Pollard and Javonte Williams, not knowing what the hell I was getting into with Javonte Williams. Ended up working out week one, but still unsettled. I had a feeling that people, especially after what we saw in week one with Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, people would be a little bit scared off of Walker. So I ended up going back in, getting him for a decent price point. But I looked at my team, and while I thought, it did well, it wasn't to the point where I needed to spend all my budget because, like I said, Jamar Chase went for $853 of $1,000 budget. And that's just a lot of money. He hits another dud game, then you're really stuck at that point because you're dealing with a bunch of people who still have budget, and you're arguably going to get an A-list player every single week come back on the waiver wire. So because there's so much focus on the team that got eliminated's top players, some of the other guys can go for a lot cheaper. And that's something that you can remember too. And that's something that going in, knowing how good your team is, you don't have to necessarily upgrade if you don't want to. And for someone like Jamar Chase, if you have stud receivers already, why are you in on that bidding? Why are you going to spend 3/4 of your budget? Jamar Chase is great, but if you have good receivers, then you don't need to do it. You don't have to think about, for week 15, for week 13, for week 10. No, you're thinking of the next few weeks. You're still focusing on depth. And it stinks when you lose your top guy. Then you're very vulnerable, especially early on. For me, it's looking like things should be fine with Drake London, but I might lose my top guy. So that's why I tried to get depth in other areas. And sometimes when it comes to the waiver wire for guillotine leagues specifically, chop leagues, and by the way, every week I'm not going to be talking guillotine leagues necessarily unless I get questions about them. But I figured this week, especially while a lot of people are still in before people start getting eliminated, because in these leagues, by the way, for those that are wondering how it goes, it's a 19-team league essentially. And what ends up happening is the lowest score each week gets eliminated, and then their players go back into the waiver wire, and you bid on those players. So, in my guillotine league, Jamar Chase was on the waiver wire. So that's interesting. But the thing with those leagues are someone's going to lose that first week. Week one, their seasons are going to be over, and that's going to be that. So that's the interesting thing with guillotine leagues. And we do a lot on guillotine leagues. They're a lot of fun. They're getting a lot more popular. You can do double elimination somehow if you really want to, but then if you have fewer teams. But still, for me in these types of leagues, I'm fine with spending, but you got to spend when you need, not just to spend. You have a stud running back core. Don't necessarily spend on a top running back that's going to maybe even cost you $500 early. You want a little bit of your budget. And I'll say this for those that are really thinking down the road, if you are in those final 5 weeks or so. I like to walk in there. I've been in that position a few times. I like to walk in there with at least $50, $60 of my budget left. So I could spend on someone. If I can somehow have 100, that's fine. But that's loose. It all depends on what happens with your team. But yeah, I ended up getting Ken Walker because my running back core was a little bit shaky. Oh, Tony asking an interesting question because this I saw this morning and just a smile went to my face because, yes, does the Christian Watson $13 million extension, does it muddy the water? I mean, is it a nothing burger? Remember, this guy's recovering from a really, really bad knee injury, torn ACL. He's going to be coming back in probably, if I have to say, maybe even 4 weeks, 5 weeks, we'll have to see. And who knows, because they got a lot of pass catchers there. Who knows how quickly he'll be reintegrated? We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, long term, it adds to the hodgepodge that is the Green Bay Packers receiving core. I was a little bit, and I knew it was a contract year, little bit confused. Maybe they see something in him. But let me just tell you something about Christian Watson as someone who, when he was a rookie, made sure I got him in all my rookie drafts. What a freaking headache this guy is. There are a few players that just stand out that, yeah, they get hurt, but then they come back in. Christian Watson is one of those players that I don't know what it is. Something always happens to him and he misses a portion of the game. And I'm not making fun of him or being a hater. It's just, it happens so much. I call it the Will Fuller effect because it happened to him a lot. And Christian Watson, if I'm starting him, I can't have him leaving the game and missing snaps. That's the big thing with him. So yeah, it's one of those things that does it muddy the waters? Yes, but the waters are already so muddy there. I've got them little sprinkled, like little sprinkles on your ice cream all over my fantasy teams. I've got teams with Reed. I've got teams with Dobbs. I wasn't sure what to make of Golden. Wasn't really that big on him. It's just, yeah, it's a hodgepodge right there. It absolutely 1000% is. And if we look at the breakdown here, because now we got, for those that have investments in Packers wide receivers, it kind of stinks to have to make these decisions now, especially if you're a team with questionable players on it. So that's where, for Green Bay, it becomes tough that they're, and just unfortunately with the schedule gods kind of working against you here for those that have Packers. Trust me, I'm in the crap too because of that. I mean, look at how the targets were divided. They were very divided last week. Absolutely very much divided. And so it's very hard to tell. No, we don't have to worry about that with Watson or anything. But yeah, and Tony, and you feel my pain here as someone who has tried with Christian Watson for years and years. Whether it's he's out for the game or we get the note that he's being evaluated for a concussion or he's limping on the sidelines, he goes, something always happens to this guy. So yeah, I saw that and I was pretty confused considering they've got a boatload of other pass catchers. The only other thing that separates is, yeah, red zone targets there. Dobbs got 2. And that's really going in. That's really like the one thing of minor separation that just doesn't even need. You got Kraft in there. You've got just too many guys. It's a battle royale at this point. So it's good to have them until the dust settles here if you have the roster space. But I've got a league where I've got just a really weak receiving core because I went in. This was an auction. And it's funny because I write a lot about fantasy football auctions and everything. But when it came to what I did, I wanted Bijan Robinson. I went all in on him. I went in big time on Kyron Williams too. And it's one thing normally in a type of strategy, if I go in on a Bijan Robinson, then I'm looking at who I spent 60 of my 200 on. Then I'm looking at that point at a maybe $20 back. But I ended up getting a little greedy because I had gotten Drake London. I'm like, great. Just like you all read at fantasyguru.com, I got my top 2-tier running back, my top of the top running back, my top 2-tier wide receiver. Love Drake London. And now let's see what else we could do. and I went in a little too hard on Kyron Williams. And because of that, I ended up with a very, what I call loose receiving core, where I've got Romeo Doubs, DJ Moore, who I had to start. And because my Christian Kirk, who I know I've been asked about a little bit here, him being out, Luther Burden on my bench doing nothing. So I got a very loose receiving core here. So I'm trying to slow build that. And yeah, it's tough. It's a very tough decision as someone who has Drake London and Christian Kirk. I'm probably going to have to just close my eyes and start Romeo Doubs. And that's not going to be fun here against Washington. They're fun, though. As someone in the DC area, how can you not love it? And by the way, for those with Terry McLaurin, big play that should have happened. Daniels just missed him. He was wide freaking open. Daniels overthrew him by very, I don't want to say very little, but by a foot or whatever, couple feet, he overthrew him. But man, McLaurin got free, because I think sometimes we wonder when there are contract issues happening, what's the player doing on the side? They're going to be in there. Are they more at risk of a soft tissue injury, which could cost them 3 to 5, let's just say. So to me, I wasn't worried about that going in, but man, that Commanders offense liked them very, very much here. So for me, at this point, for those that are wondering on how to utilize those Packers pass catchers, yeah, it's a hodgepodge. The extension for Watson just makes me roll my eyes a little bit, because they're now going to have to deal with that headache a little bit more right here. So did a little guillotine strategy for everybody here, because I know still popular, being that most players are in, except if you came in last place, then nope, no soup for you. But let's welcome on to try to figure out what the hell we're doing with a very attractive, all of a sudden intriguing, especially when it came to waivers, Cleveland Browns offense, is Rich Maletto, the fantasy Bosco here. Make sure you don't follow him at Fantasy Bosco here, and don't get in his crosshairs either, because one of the things about Rich, I'll just tell you, he's a really good friend, and if Rich is on your side and you go after one of Rich's wolf pack, well, you're going to get eaten. So, Rich, great to be with you, man. How you doing?
Good, Fancy. That's a compliment, man. I'll take that as a compliment any day of the week.
I'm not just saying that so because I'm afraid you'll eat me or anything like that. So I just wanted to make sure I put that out there too. But dude, your Browns are all the rage, man. I mean, that's what it's been, because there's a lot that we don't know. And I saw you put up a piece at fantasyguru.com where you do NFL coverage. You also do NASCAR and racing coverage too. And one of the things you were talking about is maybe even selling Dylan Sampson, who we saw be very active in the passing attack last week, because Judkins kind of hanging over our heads. He's not practicing, being with the league and all. But should we maybe just hold on to Sampson for a little bit longer here? And do you think that even when Judkins is fully immersed into this offense, Sampson can still have a solidified role that could maybe justify him being a flex play?
So the reason I have him as a sell is I don't know that his value is going to increase any more than it currently is at. Holding him for the next 2 to 3 weeks, I expect the same value, right?
Okay.
But it takes days, oftentimes a week, to get these trades done. And I'd rather be on the front side of it. Where I'm coming from is I've been very steadfast about this all off season, going into the season. What the Browns want to do when all the dust settles and suspensions are taken care of, they want a 1-2 punch of Judkins and Sampson, much like we saw a few years ago with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. We all love Chubb. He's one of the greatest running backs, in my opinion, that's played. He didn't get the volume when he should have, but that goes back to my point. We all complained he wasn't getting enough volume. They were always splitting this backfield. They took 2 running backs in the first 4 rounds. I think that actions speak louder than words. They're screaming, we want a 2 tandem backfield. The problem is Sampson's not been good at pass protection. That was a knock coming out. Now, most young rookies get better at that. You have to get better at that if you're going to be on the field. So I expect Sampson to make significant improvements in a very short order, because he's going to be on the field. He's going to be thrown to the wolves, so to speak. He's going to have to figure it out, and I think he will. But when it's all said and done, I think this is no more than a Judkins and Sampson tandem. And right now, people are buying into this is Sampson's backfield. Now, the problem is, I don't know when the dust is going to settle, Finsty. If Judkins gets a 6-game suspension, we have Sampson for probably 8 weeks
Right.
of being a significant role, of which case you're 100% right. Don't sell. There's no need to sell. We've got a cheap draft pick that's an RB3 at worst, basically, right? The problem is we don't know the suspension. The only reason Judkins isn't practicing today is because he's meeting with the league to discuss this potential suspension. We've heard anywhere from 2 to 6 games. If it's 2 games, I expect by week 6, week 8, Judkins is going to be back in the fold, and we're going to be talking about a 50-50 split like people are freaking out about in Seattle, with an offense that I don't think has the ceiling that Seattle does from a rushing aspect. And for Sampson to be out there on passing downs, which is where I think he fits well in the passing game, receiving the ball, he's got to get better at pass protection. So we have a bunch of what ifs for what we believe the final destination and goal will be. I'm saying take advantage of that now, because come week 8, I don't think Sampson's the guy. I think Sampson has a role, but what Sampson is now versus what I think he will be by week 8, Kareem Hunt, I feel like now's the time to sell. Now, Jeff is right. There isn't that much of a difference between Judkins and Sampson. They're closer than people think. They're closer than the 2 rounds of draft spots. But the Browns clearly like Judkins enough to take him 2 rounds ahead of Sampson.
Right.
So there's something they really much like. And we saw it last year with Ohio State. I feel like what Ohio State did with Judkins there with Henderson is very much what the Browns want to do with Judkins and Sampson in Cleveland. So do we think Sampson's value is going to increase over the next 2 to 3 weeks? I'm doubtful on that. That's why I listed him as a sell. I feel like we're getting peak price right now because people see him as the volume back. And I think by week 8, that's not going to be the case.
It's interesting because if you're selling him right now at this moment, you really, the market's going to shift. You're in that gray area right now until we find out what we're dealing with here. Because do you sell with the unknown right now and you try to sell them that way, or do you wait until you find out and then you decide whether or not to sell? I mean, that's a big, it's interesting where we're at right at this moment, because 2 to 6 games, man, for some people, they can't go. I mean, people can't go 0-6. And I know you're not basing your entire season on if Judkins plays, or at least you shouldn't. Otherwise, you have a really, really crappy running back core. But you can't be 1-5 really, or 0-6, and then expect to go on some kind of crazy run where you win out and you somehow survive to make the playoffs.
See, that's why I want to sell, because my guess is most people that drafted Sampson drafted him as their RB4 or RB5.
Right.
So they aren't a part of their plans for starting. Meanwhile, you got desperate people that are 0-1 and are fearful about being 0-2 and need a running back because Caleb Johnson's not coming through, or Jadon Blue's not coming through, or Tank Bigsby got moved, or whatever the scenario may be. And even if we get to 6-game suspension, will Sampson's value actually increase or stay the same? Because right now, people are buying Sampson as a volume back with some risk. Is that change in 3 weeks? I don't know that it does. Whereas if we find out Judkins only has a 2-game suspension, now I think Sampson takes a hit in value, and now you're going to be selling at a lower cost. And that's why I feel like now's the time to sell to get peak price for him. If your roster is solid, don't rush to sell. There's no need to sell. You have potentially a secret weapon in your back pocket. I'm all for keeping that secret weapon. I really am. But the whole point of the article is sell high. Sell high, buy low. Right. I don't know that Sampson's value increases any more than where we're at right now.
Where are you at with Fannin? Because a very popular pickup. Because here's the thing, man. It's, you're reading where he was lining up, how involved he was in the offense, the targets, and you've got a bunch of people being like, well, Njoku's the tight end. But what's stopping, of course, Fannin from being an all-encompassing pass-catching weapon? That Joker role lining up all over the field throughout. And I'll say this, I'll add it on here, Rich, because this is where I also question it too, as someone who just picked up Fannin just for intrigue for free, didn't spend much capital. But, you're playing Baltimore, double-digit spread, thinking they're going to have to throw Cleveland a lot. And can this guy still get enough volume even for an additional week? Where are you at with Fannon's role in the Browns?
Do you remember Elijah Moore's role last year?
Yes.
Not high percentage of snaps, typically the third guy of the wide receivers in snaps, sometimes second, but consistently saw a lot of targets. Just didn't do much with it because they were all in the short area of the field. Replace Elijah Moore with Harold Fannin, and that's what you have. And the difference is trash numbers for a wide receiver are kind of good numbers for a tight end.
Right.
So now we go from hating Moore and what his role is on the team to, my God, we love Fannin. So I think Fannon's role is going to stay. Not to mention the Browns run a lot of two tight end sets. This goes back to Harrison Bryant and David Njoku. They have done this with Kevin Stefanski for a long time. That Pittsburgh game I went to against the Browns, the starting lineup was a two tight end set. You know, that's more fluff in name than anything else. But my point is they run a lot of two tight end sets. They're going to use him as a big slot. So I think he has value. It's going to be volatile. I don't think you can expect the 9 targets every week. It's going to be volatile. But I'll be frank. I don't know that I'm dropping Mark Andrews for Harold Fannin. I honestly get the questions, though, because I think that there's some stability to Fannin, but I don't think I can go there. Now, you asked me about Dalton Kincaid and Fannin. I have no problem dropping Dalton Kincaid, picking up Fannin, and riding Fannin. I don't think Kincaid...
I've got that exact scenario, bro, where I've got Dalton Kincaid, and I'm like, wait a second here. Let's see how this goes. But Rich, I'm someone that, look, if I have tight ends that are proving themselves, if I flex a second tight end, I don't give a crap, man. I just want points at the end of the day. So,
and in deeper leagues, honestly, the tight end play makes sense because why put a running back in there that you're hoping for 6 points or a tight end that has a ceiling of 12 or 15 points just because of the volume?
I want to win the game. I don't care how my roster looks. I just want to win. So, yeah, I'm in that exact scenario, man. I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself, because again, it's just the fear of the unknown. It's been 1 week. Let's see how it goes. I'm into the matchup here, but think about it, man. Kittle owners are kind of picking this guy up, expecting to ride him out for a number of weeks.
Well, and I think you could. Like, I do. I have more faith in Fannin than I do Kincaid. I really do. I think the volume is more stable for the role that Fannin has than what Kincaid is. I think you have Knox that's going to eat into it, unless there's an injury at the receiver, which is when Kincaid really ate. Otherwise, when they've been healthy, Kincaid has been boomer bust and fluky. And I would much rather have a Britton Strange that I think is good for 4 or 5 targets a week. I don't necessarily believe that Kincaid is. I think it's going to be up and down. I do. I think Fannin is probably good for those 5 to 7 targets a week. I think he's taken over Elijah Moore's role, and Elijah Moore got a shit pile of targets last year. He really did. Didn't do much with it. But 6 for 40 for a tight end is good. 6 for 40 for a receiver, not so much. So, from a fantasy perspective, it is what it is. And who's to say they don't even move on from Njoku? Fannin is being more than just a tight end. On early down sets, Njoku got the tight end start. On third down, it was a big split. On 2 tight end sets and 3 tight end sets, they both were out there all the time. This is going to continue, and I think the 2 tight end sets continue because they don't have a lot of depth at receiver. I mean, think about this. What would you rather put out there? Tillman, Judy, Njoku, and Isaiah Bond, or Thrash, or Judy, Tillman, Njoku, Fannin. And oh, by the way, that personnel gives you a little more flexibility with the run game, which we know you want to do. So what are the Browns going to do? If I'm the Browns, I'm running Fannin out there on a pretty regular basis.
Right. I mean, it's interesting, man. It's just, Tillman, I've got on my teams. It's just, I'm very intrigued, and I don't mind when it's Joe Flacco running the ball. I know
as long as Flacco's under center, bro.
Exactly. We were talking about
fantasy. It's going to be fine.
Right. We were talking about that about a few weeks ago, maybe even before I was off for a few weeks, about how all is well until that quarterback change happens. And the big question is, when or if it's going to happen?
In my opinion, at this point, short of an injury, it won't happen until after week 8, because until the Browns prove that they're lost, the season is done, I don't see them making a change. I just don't. And here's what the real kicker is. Cleveland should be 1-0 between bad kicking and 2 drops. The 2 interceptions from Flacco hit receivers in the hand that they punched up.
Yep.
2 of them. This wasn't Flacco forcing the ball. This wasn't Flacco stretching the field. This was 2 receivers with bonehead moves, who, by the way, Flacco almost hit another 300 yards. Besides Winston, nobody else has thrown for 300 yards in this offense besides Flacco. Going back to Baker, right? Baker was the last one, and since then it was Flacco and then Winston last year. Watson hasn't. None of these other guys they've tried have. I don't think you're going to see it from Gabriel. I don't think you're going to see it from Sanders. There is no need to make a quarterback change. The frustrating thing for the Browns is they gave that game away. Between a missed kick, an easy kick, short range, a missed extra point, the interceptions at the wrong time, they gave that game away. And this Browns defense is better than people remember. This is much closer to the defense of 2 years ago than last year. Granted, injuries will come into play, but Corey Schlesinger is doing so much better in the middle than what they had to fight through the last couple of years with the injuries. So it's just a shame. I think the Browns, honestly, I would take the Browns with the points.
I was about to ask if you think they'd cover the spread. Division game. It's a big spread. Their defense really, the Bengals offense is no joke. We could talk and make fun of their defense all day, but their offense, they're serious offense right there. And they couldn't really do jack.
Nothing. And I understand Cincinnati starts slow. And I warned in our little group chat about, we were doing the confidence pool and stuff. And I said, I wouldn't touch the Cincinnati game if my life depended on it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And look, it played out the way I thought. I had picked the Browns to win. I was the only one on staff to pick the Browns to win. I got it wrong. But I tell you what, that was the Browns had that game won. They gave that away. Yeah. And they will play the Ravens tough. The Ravens are doing this special 30-year thing. I think there's going to be a lot of attitude out there. If anything, as a Browns or Ravens fan, we've just better be hoping for minimal injuries. There's going to be some. We need to, because it's going to be a nasty game. It's going to get chippy. It's going to get violent. Anytime you give me a big spread in these division games, I have a hard time thinking anyone covers the spread.
Right, exactly, because they know each other really well and everything. And like you said, the Browns hung with the Bengals. They had that game.
They had it won. They did.
Spread would not be, even if the Browns won by a point, spread would not be 11.5.
No. They had the Bengals were getting 8.5 against the Bengals.
Right. So interesting. Something interesting before the rest of the world starts putting money and shifting the odds a little bit. Browns with the points against Baltimore. Fantasy betting, I'm interested in this team to see what they could do against the Ravens here. Also interested, like you are from your article at fantasyguru.com, Daniel Jones, from what we saw from him. Now, again, you're buying in on Daniel Jones, and here's the interesting thing, Rich. The matchup this week, though, not
terrible.
Terrible. So,
terrible.
But you still put him as a buy-in, man. So for those that are buying in, are you also suggesting that he's a safe stream option? Or when you're saying buying in, you're talking a few weeks down the road here?
I put him in the article so people start dealing with trades. I would wait to make a deal for Jones after this game.
Yeah.
Jones played phenomenal. The only quarterback to score a touchdown on 7 drives in the second. It was some odd stat about scoring and how much he scored and all of that. Anthony Richardson, in my opinion, is dead. It's a done deal. I didn't want any action on Richardson. Daniel Jones is the quarterback for the rest of the season. He offers you rushing upside and ceiling that a lot of other players don't. He has suitable pieces that fit for his style of play. He's got a big receiver in Pittman with a nice catch radius. He's got speed guys in Mitchell and Downs. He's got a bigger body in Pierce, and he's got a phenomenal tight end that is creative in Warren. And we saw Jones. He has no problem. Remember, Daniel Bellinger a couple of years ago was a savvy little tight end to use for fantasy when you were streaming or just trying to get something off the heap. He was borderline top 10, top 12 each week, just getting enough volume from Jones. This matchup's going to be tough. I expect, maybe he throws for 170 yards, 2 turnovers, and 1 touchdown, right? And people are like, see, Jones is what we thought he was. The whole reason the head coach there is in Indianapolis is he's supposed to be a quarterback whisperer. Jones was, in my opinion, was the perfect fit and the perfect ad. he has way more tools than Anthony Richardson does from a passing perspective. I think Daniel Jones ends the year as a top 10 quarterback. That's where I'm at.
Wow. Very
top
nice.
12.
Wow.
Top 12.
There we go. So yeah, this week's it's gonna be a little bit rough with Denver, but man, that's gonna be interesting to see what he can do.
He rushes enough that I think moves him from that QB2 territory closer to fringe QB1. So I'm buying in for the long haul.
You know, Rich, I have the link up for those that want to join the Elite Mafia. As you know, I mean, this is a free stream for everybody out there. It's kind of like a arm extension, reach out, a high five to everybody out there to show what kind of heat we're bringing at fantasyguru.com. So before we continue, why don't you tell everybody what you have coming up on the site?
All right. So later today, weekly streamers will drop. That will have on there the defenses I'm looking at, potential fill-ins, and I was thinking about it as I was getting ready to park here. I'm going to heed your advice because I was listening to Jeff Gober's streamers. I am targeting too low of ownership. I need to raise that ownership up a little bit to give some better names for those people that aren't in leagues that are ridiculously deep.
For defense or just players in general?
Players in general.
Okay.
Because if you remember, you probably don't remember, but I think I told you in the past I'd look for 15% ownership or less.
Oh my goodness. No, can I stop you right there? Respectfully,
Yes.
Can I stop you? Okay.
Yes.
So this is a good time to talk to, because people who have waivers that are going Wednesday into Thursday and all of that, here's the deal with percentages. Don't let those, and this is, I guess, more for content providers who are writing this stuff, but still, don't get turned off when you see someone that's owned in 40 to 45% of leagues, because that's taking into account on these sites a lot of dead leagues that never even got off the ground. That brings down, it's like the kid in class that brings down the curve, or the asshole that's just too smart. They get the 100 on the test and it brings it up, which is even worse. But so that brings down the average a little bit. For me, Rich, is someone who throughout my career has done waiver wire coverage, at least for basketball, also a little bit for football in the past too. For me, I stick with that 40%. Even if there's someone for football that goes out to 45%, I think that 40 to 45% is an acceptable range. And it takes into account everything from 8 to 10 team leagues to, hey, someone could have just done a rage or paranoia drop and they could still be out there. So I think you got to be nice. You got to be a little bit nicer to yourself, because it will help make your content coverage easier with talking about a few guys that, popular names, but only owned in 35-40%. Write them up. Okay.
So like I said, because I was hearing some of Jeff's names and I was like, oh, I didn't even have him on my list because I had too high of an ownership on him, right?
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
like Jordan Mason, for example, right? Was one in the names.
Now again,
meanwhile, I'm telling people go chase Kenneth Gainwell for a week at 2.2%, right?
Can we be honest? I mean, Jordan Mason too. I mean, do you think personally in 10-team leagues, and it's good to, of course, to talk about, as well. And I think when Jeff does this coverage, he just wants to thump it in all of our skulls, us, the audience, the listeners, handcuff your freaking backfield.
Right.
That's really, and you remember, Jeff, to me, was the first host / analyst, at least on Fantasy Sports Radio, to really be like, hey, don't waste your draft picks. Handcuff. And now other people, of course, are getting on it. But I think that that's part of it right there, to just make sure in case Mason's out there. That would be a gift from the gods if Jordan was out there.
I actually think Mason's going to see more volume than Jones when it's all said and done. I think Jones is the better complement. He brings more to the passing game than Mason does, but it was clear to me that age is starting to show up with Jones, and Mason is still running hungry, and he will be fine. It was just when he made that comment, I was like, man, I'm looking at Kenneth Gainwell. I'm looking at receiver Casey Washington. I'm looking at these guys, where it's like the ownership is so low that I know they're available in virtually every league. Yeah, I think maybe I've narrowed that pool down too far.
No, I mean, and look, someone like Fannin, the percentage jumped because I'd say in a lot of leagues, he was one of your top pickups. And by the way, not a very favorable week on the waiver wire, kind of crap and trash, if anything. There's not that one name that's like spend 3/4 of your budget or anything like that. But being that he was there, you could still suggest him, even though his ownership probably jumped up to, if I had to guess without looking, 65, 70%.
That's my guess. And that was the other thing writing it last night, looking at the percentages and going, well, I know these percentages move significantly.
Yeah, they do.
I mean, for some of these lower owned guys like Fannin, for example, Gainwell's probably going to see a big bump.
And this is for streaming too, Rich. This isn't necessarily waiver. It's more for streaming. So you can even think of it like this. Some of these guys that you're suggesting to stream, it's not whether or not to pick them up. It's they're on someone's bench already.
Right. And that's the idea of streamers, is finding something that's easily picked up because people don't have them. Right. Yes.
People don't have them, or it's a lower end guy with a majorly high ceiling. I've spent more time this episode talking Cleveland Browns than I think I have collectively in my entire 15-year career in this business. But what's the reason, Rich? Because a lot of these guys this week have higher ceilings, double-digit spreads. They're going to throw. Flacco still has an arm left. Yeah, it's Baltimore, but you know what? You still saw the Browns be able to produce a little bit last week. Fannin, excitement around him. Tillman, excitement around him. There's they've got guys with higher ceilings that if I'm already finding myself stuck with a flex, Tillman right there becomes a little bit of a security blanket for me that should be able to get in a PPR 10 points, if not very close to it. Flirting.
I think Tillman ends up. It's nice to see how Flacco was distributing the ball.
Yes.
I think Tillman is I think it's Judy second. It's Tillman one as far as the receiving targets in Cleveland. I think you're going to see Fannin, like I said, with that volume like we saw from Elijah Moore. I am basically looking at Fannin as the Elijah Moore piece in this offense. So What we got from Elijah Moore last year is what we're going to get from Fannin this year, which is why I'm willing to say F it. I'll drop some of these low-ish tier tight end one players like the Kincaids of the world, and I'm willing to gamble on Fannin. But I play a little ballsy, Funsty. I know what puts me on tilt and what doesn't. Being bold like that doesn't put me on tilt. I don't have FOMO with most tight ends. I want tight ends with set volume. And if I think Fannin's going to be Moore had so much volume last year. I mean, if you go look at targets, him and Wan'Dale Robinson got stupid amounts of targets and just did nothing with them. But for a tight end, the numbers they produced, it's tight end one numbers. So if that's what they're going to be, then sign me up.
Right, exactly. By the way, this trade we just got, it's interesting. Nico Collins and Judkins, he was offered for Big Bill and Calvin Ridley. Here's the thing. We don't
Bill and Ridley.
Yeah, we just don't know what we're looking at. And I can't tell you, of course, Adam, without knowing who else is in your core, but we just, at this moment, we don't know what the suspension is going to be. So I can't.
If there is one.
We
assume.
Wild. So maybe hang on, see if you can float the trade a little bit until we get some kind of ruling, maybe later in the day. So we'll have to see. Tony seems to think that he should take it. Nico Collins, love me some Nico Collins.
Here's my concern there. I think Ridley's role is solidified. Nico's is kind of solidified, but the Texans look atrocious. And I know Cam Moore didn't look great, but actually Tennessee looks serviceable. The offensive line looks much better than anything C.J. Stroud has in front of him. Cam Moore and C.J. Stroud numbers were similar, other than the completion percentage, which Stroud was just much more better. And I think I'd rather have Bill than Junkins the rest of the year.
I actually, in one of my leagues, picked up, I'm probably going to butcher the name, but Manor. I tried to watch him. I watched him say the name like 6 times today.
I'm with you on him, man.
Because again, I mean, look, if he's being utilized a lot just like that, if Calvin Ridley is going to be getting top coverage, which let's face it, he is, somebody else has to be targeted in this very bare offense.
Look, he was a deeper round rookie, and he's starting. And it wasn't just in name only, listing him as a starter. He played the snaps. Did he see a ton of volume? No, but he saw work. I mean, he didn't catch the touchdown like I had hoped for in my write-up last week when I had him as a streaming option. But if Ridley goes down, he's the next man up. And there's not a lot of options in this passing attack. He has the tools. I mean, the two receivers that I'm probably most interested in, maybe a third would be Thornton out of Vegas, but I'm really kind of in on Manor as well as oh no, I'm drawing the blank on the rookie. Tesla. Yeah. I really am impressed with Tesla. It's a matter of time before he sees the field more. I'm a little disappointed that the Lions re-signed Jameson because I felt like that was where Tesla was going to fit the best, was in that kind of role. But I don't know how the Lions keep this man off the field as long as he's healthy.
Yeah. By the way, I'm seeing this right now. George is saying someone dropped Golden and going to pick him up. Have waiver 1 priority for Matthew Golden.
I'm not using waiver 1.
No. Yeah, no. We don't know. No one knows. It's too divided there. The pizza pie is cut in 16ths like a 5-year-old's birthday party. That's what it is.
Pass for me on that.
Yeah, no. If you're doing waiver priority, we'll sit on that just a little bit. But yeah, Rich, it's at the end of the day when it comes to defense, by the way, because we were just talking about the Titans, I picked the Rams up in a couple of leagues to stream for this week. Who are a few defenses that you'd be cool streaming that you'd see out there?
Give me anyone that plays the Giants as long as Russell Wilson's under center. So that would be, I just had the list and I don't remember what I did with it. Hold on, I have it.
That would be Dallas.
Dallas. All right. Give me Dallas against the Giants. Give me the Patriots against the Dolphins. The Bears, I know they have a tougher matchup with the Lions, but I was impressed with the Bears defense, even with guys being out and injured. Right. So I'm all good with the Bears. And no, the Cardinals defense wasn't overly impressive, but Carolina looked terrible. So give me Arizona. I'm all about using defenses against bad offenses. That's just kind of my plan of attack.
Right. Streaming defenses is almost fun every single week too. And it's winnable too, which is why in drafts, I don't spend up for the top defense or even the top kicker for that matter either. But we have weekly rankings for defense and kicker, all via Jeff Mans at fantasyguru.com. Rich has his content coming up. I'm always seeing Rich hanging out in our Discord, a lot of different Discord channels, Rich, that we have, trying to make sure that all of our questions stay organized, whether they're trade questions, whether they're guillotine questions, Seriously. Whether they're lineup-specific starter sit questions too. We're just trying to make sure we get to everyone's questions, and that's why we have a hell of a lot of different football-related Discord channels.
Absolutely. I guess I'm confused on Adam's trade question here because now he's saying he's got Judkins already. Adam, here's where I'm at. I don't know who you're starting over Ridley, but Ridley is an easy wide receiver 3 or 2 for me. So there's not a ton of people that I see starting over Ridley on most rosters that I have. Okay.
This was the original trade, by the way.
Right.
The big thing was Collins. He was
right.
very into Collins.
So if you're into Collins, this is a trade for Collins, but I think you're overpaying for him. Yeah. I don't have a lot of faith in James Cook, and Josh Jacobs I worry about breaking down. So that's great that Bill and Ridley are on your bench, and I understand you're looking at trading your depth to add a starter, but I don't know who you're starting Nico over. And right now, I think there are legitimate concerns about the Texans, and it stems 100% from the lack of offensive line.
Right.
So, that's fine, but I don't think you're getting the upgrade. I don't think the upgrade from Ridley to Collins is worth Bill.
Right.
I don't.
I'm with you there.
To get Judkins back, fine, it's a wild card, but even come week 8, week 10, and I think Judkins is up to speed, I think you're still going to want to play Bill over Judkins in most of those cases. And we still have to get through all the bye weeks. So right. I can appreciate trading bench depth for a starter. I just think you're overpaying for that starter.
The problem is bench depth becomes starters during those
right.
heavy bye weeks. That's the problem.
I see Ridley starting for me in my teams most weeks. It was a tough matchup, and he got, 8 targets, 11 targets?
Yes.
It's not like the volume wasn't there.
Kane's the best. He's one of the best.
Right. So, he got more volume than Nico did.
Right.
So, that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, and again, just remember, just because you have your lineup, rostered or, put in situated a certain way. You got to view everyone on your fantasy team is an asset of some kind. Whether you use them week 1 or you don't use them for the first time until week 5 and those bye weeks begin. Everyone on your team needs to be viewed as an asset, not just grouped in as, well, he's on my bench. And Adam, by the way, Adam, I'm not picking on you by saying that, talking down to you. I'm just saying, even me, we all have to remember that everybody on our team, it's like a team, any team, whether you play intramurals, whether you play in fantasy team, everyone's got to do their part. Everybody's got to be an asset there, because you never know when all of a sudden you're down your top 2 running backs via injury. And now you're sitting there with Judkins, who might be suspended, or you can have Big Bill, who at least can help you weather the storm a little bit.
Right. And if you notice, he said he's got Ibuka playing over Ridley. That's great for now. What's that look like in 2 weeks?
Right. So, yeah. So, and Adam, I appreciate that. Yeah, never. And, and I think I can speak, Rich, on behalf of everybody at Fantasy Guru. We never, because I got a loud voice, you've got a loud voice, Jeff has a loud voice. Right. We never, ever, ever want to come across as talking down to you, as thinking you're any kind of, any questions being dumb, stupid. There's none of that here. This is an open forum. This is a friends hangout. And that's how I've always tried to handle my shows. Maybe I can't see Rich, but Rich probably doesn't want to be my friend anymore. But you see, that's why I have all of you. But at the end of the day, we're not trying to talk down to anybody. We want to make sure that we help you win at the end of the day when all is said and done. You are seeing Rich Maletto as part of fantasyguru.com, does NFL and also does NASCAR content too. So I thank Rich very much for hanging out with me. Rich will be on with me, by the way, like I said, every single Wednesday. Make sure you check out Fantasy Sports Daily. Ray Flowers back tomorrow. You get a little baseball and some football. Tyler Beaker will be joining him. And make sure you continue rocking and rolling at fantasyguru.com. And check out the Elite Sports Show, Jeff Mans and Ray Flowers today, 2 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Channel 87, getting you ready for week 2. It's okay. You got crushed in week 1. That doesn't mean your season is over. Hang in there. It's going to be okay. We all do this as a family because the Elite Mafia family sticks together and we win together. So I thank everybody for hanging out right here. I'm Justin Fensterman at Fensty Sports, FENSTY Sports on X and Instagram, and at Fensty, FENSTY in our Discord channels here. Tomorrow, same time, same place, same channel. Fantasy Sports Daily, the Elite Plus Network, powered by the good old FG, Fantasy Guru.